Hello friends, today we're making apple caramel macarons. They're shaped like apples. I have a printable template on my blog so you can print it and place it under your silicone mat or parchment paper. These macarons are filled with a salted caramel buttercream and homemade apple pie filling. They're so delicious. If you like making macarons, subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every week. Let's start by making the apple pie filling. First, let's peel our apples and then chop them very finely. This is important because if the apples are big, you're gonna have trouble filling and closing the macaron sandwiches later. So you just wanna make sure that the apples are chopped very finely. Place the apples in a small saucepan. Add brown sugar, add a little bit of lemon juice, some cinnamon, and we're also going to add some freshly ground nutmeg. Then let's bring this mixture to a boil, reduce the heat, and let it simmer gently for about 10 minutes until the apples have softened. And then while the apples cook, we're going to mix some cornstarch with water and dissolve the cornstarch. And then we're going to add this mixture to our softened apples to make sure they're very thick. You don't want a macaron filling that is too wet. That's going to make your shells soggy. So the cornstarch is going to help us thicken this apple filling. Then cook a little bit to thicken up the apples. And once they're thick, remove them to a bowl and let them cool down. Now let's make the caramel sauce for the buttercream. Start by placing some sugar in a small saucepan with a heavy bottom. Make sure the pan has a heavy bottom so the sugar doesn't burn. Over medium heat, continue to stir the sugar non-stop until it melts. I don't use water on my caramel sauce, so this is very important. Just continue to stir the sugar so this way it's going to melt evenly. Pay close attention when making this sauce. Leave the other ingredients ready and nearby because you're going to need to move fast so the sugar doesn't burn. As soon as you see the last bit of sugar melting in the pan, add the heavy cream. Be very careful because it's going to bubble up and you don't want to get burned. Once the bubbles subside a little bit, add the butter and stir until the butter melts over medium-low heat. The trick for this sauce is to not overcook. If the sauce turns out hard, it's because you've overcooked it at some point. Add the salt if making salted caramel and then immediately remove from the heat. As soon as all the butter is melted, you need to remove the sauce from the heat and pour into a glass jar or glass container. Now we're going to prepare 3 piping bags with the piping tips that we're going to use later. For the apple part, the red part, I used a 12 Wilton. For the leaves, I used a 6, and for the brown part, I used a 3. So I'm just going to leave this ready to go before I start making the macarons. When you're making macarons, it's very important to leave all of your ingredients measured out and everything that you're going to need set aside. So you have an easy time when you're making macarons and you can just focus on the process and on getting the stages to be at the right consistency that they need to be. And I'm also going to sift the almond flour and the powdered sugar, and we're going to set that aside for later. Now let's place a bowl over a double boiler with barely simmering water and add granulated sugar and egg whites to the bowl, and we're going to whisk this until the sugar has melted. This should only take 1 to 2 minutes. You don't want to overheat this mixture too much. So just whisk it and then fill it with your finger. If you don't feel any sugar granules in the mixture, then it's ready to go. You can remove it. And then let's transfer it to a mixer and start whipping the meringue. I like to start whipping the meringue on low and then gradually increase the speed to medium and then to medium high. That's where I finish whipping my meringue until I achieve stiff peaks. Time whipping is going to depend a lot on your mixer, on the speed that you're using. So you shouldn't go by the time. You shouldn't do the same time that I'm whipping, but you should do the time that is right for you. You should just make sure to whip the meringue until you achieve the stiff peaks. And I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like and what you're looking for. So here, since our meringue is fluffy and the whisk is leaving streak marks on the meringue, we're going to test and see if this meringue is ready to go. So take a look at this. So this meringue over here is a little bit too soft for my taste. I think this meringue is under whipped. You need to keep whipping a little bit longer in order to achieve a really stiff meringue. If you have peaks that are bending down to the side, that means that the meringue is not stiff enough. So let's just whip for another 1 or 2 more minutes and test again. And as you can see, this is what a stiff meringue looks like. This is how I like my meringue to be when I'm making macarons. The peak is shooting straight up, and that's perfect. Now we're going to add our almond flour and powdered sugar to the meringue, and we're going to stir it. Since I'm dividing this batter to make 3 different colors, which is the color of the apples, the color of the leaves, and the color of the stem, I'm going to just stir until the ingredients have incorporated together, because then I'm going to divide the batter between different bowls to make the different colors. So here we're just going to stir until we see no more dry ingredients in the batter. We're not going to stir any further than that. And then we're going to divide the batter between 3 different bowls. 1 bowl for the red. And then make sure to always cover the bowls that you're not using, because otherwise they're going to dry out. A small bowl for the green color. And then we're also going to do another small bowl for the brown color. So we're going to start working with the red batter first. We're going to add some red food coloring and begin to stir the batter, and we're going to fold until the perfect consistency, which I'm going to show you. If you're a beginner at macaron making, I really advise for you to keep light on the color, because the color is going to alter the batter a lot. And it's going to make the batter very humid, and that can cause several issues such as cracking macarons or overmixed macarons if you keep adding color and stirring. So here the consistency of the batter is just not ready. It's way too thick. We need to continue to fold a little bit longer. As you can see, I had to add a lot of food coloring to obtain this color. Again, if you're a beginner, I don't recommend that you use this much food coloring. Here, this batter is perfect. It's making a figure 8 without breaking up. And as you can see, it continues to flow slowly and effortlessly off the spatula, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So now we're going to transfer this batter to the piping bag, and we're going to set it aside. Now let's work with the green batter. We're going to add some green food coloring, and we're going to do the same. We're going to stir this until the perfect consistency is achieved, and it shouldn't take long because it's such a small amount of batter. You don't need a lot because we're only making the leaves. So we're just going to continue to stir this batter until the perfect consistency is achieved. As you can see here again, the batter is flowing slowly and effortlessly off the spatula. It's time to transfer it to a piping bag. Now we're going to set the green color aside, and we're going to work on the brown batter. Let's add some brown food coloring, stir the batter, and do the same thing that we did to the other batters. Let's stir it until the perfect consistency is achieved. And now we're going to transfer the brown batter to a piping bag and also set it aside. Now that we have our 3 colors, we can start piping the apples. We're going to place the templates on a baking sheet and then put the silicone mat or the parchment paper on top so we can pipe the macarons. Start by piping from the left top corner down and then cross it over to the top right corner of the apple and then pipe it down. So from the top left down, cross it over to the top right and then pipe it down. And then use a toothpick to spread out the batter to the outlines. And then once you're done piping on the shells, bang the trays against the counter to release the air bubbles, and also use a toothpick to pop any remaining air bubbles that might be on the surface of the macarons. Now let's pipe the leaves with the green batter. And then after piping the leaves, we're also going to use a toothpick to spread it out to the outlines and make sure it's smooth. And then finally, we're going to pipe the stem. Just a note, for the leaves and for the stem, you don't want to pipe a thin layer of batter. You want to pipe a layer that is as thick as the apple that you piped. Then let the macarons rest for 20 to 40 minutes until they feel dry to the touch. When you can touch the surface of a macaron and it doesn't stick to your finger, you can bake. I baked mine at 325 for 15 to 20 minutes, rotating in between. Now let's make our caramel buttercream. Let's start by creaming the butter until it's fluffy and creamy. And then we're going to add the room temperature caramel sauce that we made earlier. Make sure that the caramel sauce is at room temperature, not warm and also not cold. Once the caramel is incorporated, we're going to add the powdered sugar. If the buttercream is too soft, add more powdered sugar to make it stiffer. And if the buttercream is too stiff, you can add just 1 teaspoon of water or milk to thin it out, and then adjust the consistency as needed. And if the sauce wasn't salted enough for you, you can also add a little bit of salt to the caramel buttercream. Then transfer the caramel buttercream to a piping bag. Pipe a ring of frosting around the edges of the apple macarons. And then we're going to spoon some of the apple filling in the middle. Also make sure that the apple filling is cooled down when you do this because you don't want to melt the butter in the buttercream. So that's it for today, friends. Thanks for watching today's video. I hope you liked it. I had the most fun making and eating this delicious caramel apple macarons. Check out the full recipe and grab the template for the apples on my blog. Bye!